Hello, welcome to the CIRS Healing Collective expert guest video series. I'm Jenny Johnson, the host and facilitator of the CIRS Healing Collective, which has been a resource for aspiring CIRS overcomers to share and connect from around the world since 2020. I'm a shoemaker proficiency partner and CIRS coach, and most importantly, an overcomer myself. What you're about to see is a 10-minute excerpt from a 90-minute group discussion that members of the CIRS Healing Collective got to have live with this expert guest. If you would like to see the full 90-minute replay, come on over to the CIRS Healing Collective. We have a robust video library from the past 5 or 6 years of so many expert guests. Better yet, you'll be able to join our future monthly live discussions with experts to come. We'd love to have you. But I would call Dr. Aimie the mother of trauma-informed medicine. She's a medical doctor, but she's bringing the concept of trauma. She's expanding the definition of trauma and helping medical doctors and clinicians and patients alike really understand how a trauma response, we'll call it nervous system dysregulation, can actually impact our biology and our mental health and our ultimate, our whole person well-being. But I think it's important, especially in today's talk, to appreciate how the trauma response or nervous system dysregulation can impact our recovery from a chronic illness like CIRS. And I think she is just the perfect person to help us understand this topic. She's a wonderful teacher. I've gone through many of your trainings, Dr. Aimie, your immune module, your brain module, your energy module. They're so relevant to this population of individuals, to those of us who are sensitive to an external trigger. We'll call it mold, bacteria, things in our environment. We may have a genetic predisposition to not handling that well. And so we're at this interface of reacting to an external trigger. Most of us are focusing on just getting rid of the mold, right? And then maybe pulling out, the toxins from our body. But you guys have heard me say so many times that CIRS is one part exposure and one part immunoreactivity. And we do what we can to minimize our exposures, for sure. But our immunoreactivity is not just driven by our genetics. It's also driven by our biochemistry, which is more complicated than just genetics. And it's driven by our neuroception. And Dr. Aimie's going to explain what that even is. Also our history, our thoughts about exposure. There's all kinds of things in our immunoreactivity that make it a little bit more complicated, but also empowering. And I hope you come away today feeling the empowering part and not the overwhelming part, that there are actually things that we can do to help ourselves be less reactive to a threatening world. This is the CIRS Healing Collective. We are about 300 aspiring CIRS overcomers from around the world. And most of us are on the Shoemaker protocol. We identify with the word CIRS, chronic inflammatory response syndrome. Even the name of that condition that we identify with, is kind of connected with what is this response and how can we manipulate that? Most of us are dealing with mold exposure or water damage building exposure, other kinds of toxins, some Lyme, and most of us are overwhelmed. And I think one of your biggest messages has to do with overwhelm and trauma, and I'm looking forward to you explaining that to us.
Trigger for me was the biggest grief that I've ever had. And that was when I started down this path that I will call the biology of trauma. I had been a foster parent, and I had even made the decision to adopt one of my foster children. And so I had that perspective of trauma, working with kids who had attachment issues, trust issues, and how that presented for them, and being able to learn, how do I work with trauma, relational trauma, attachment trauma, and get them to feel safe, to trust their new parents, their adoptive parents. But then to be able to see that, hey, all that is fine, but trauma is what made me sick. It's what precipitated chronic fatigue syndrome, of unknown etiology. It's what precipitated my autoimmunity. That was when I started diving into all of my other trainings that I had not gotten in medical school. And I started filling in the pieces: functional medicine, mental health, nutritional therapies, trauma therapies, art narrative, somatic work, parts work. And these were all the pieces that I needed. I never saw myself teaching this to other people. I was just trying to save my own life. I was just trying to get my own health, life, and career back.
Yeah.
And these were all the pieces that I needed. So when I say that trauma gets held by the body, that trauma impacts our body, it doesn't just mess with our mind, though it does that too. It is doing something to our body. That's the perspective that I'm coming from. How does it make sense that 1 month after my biggest grief, that all of these health issues would culminate into a full-blown disease and diagnosis?
Yeah.
Or the story that I start off in my book with my patient Elena. She has a car accident, and 1 year later, she's getting diagnosed with autoimmunity. How does this make sense if trauma doesn't also have this impact at a cellular level and somehow involve our immune system, involve our DNA and our epigenetics, and needs repair then if we're going to come back to a life of wholeness and authenticity? So if it's okay, Jen, I'll just lead a little somatic exercise to get us started, and then happy to go and dive into anything that you would want to. So I invite you right now to take your hands, two wonderful hands that we have, and just feel into like where in your body feels like it could use support. Is it your heart and you want to put your hands over your heart? Or no, what's speaking to you loudest is your belly, your gut, and you want to just provide support there. Or maybe your legs are feeling disconnected and numb and you want to put your hands there. You get to decide. You get to decide. Or even just a self hug. Is that the support that your body feels like it would be most helpful right now? Or even if you want to just isolate it to your neck, you can provide yourself some neck support. We've got lots of options. And so you get to decide what area in your body just seems to find that connection with you helpful right now. And as you do that, let's just pause and actually have that be connection, where we're not thinking about our to-do list. We're not thinking about what else I need to get done today. Can I just be here with my body and give it my presence? Being present with someone is one of the biggest gifts that we can give someone. You know this, when you're going through a hard time, it's that friend who can come over and say, I'm not going to try to convince you. I'm not going to try to change you. I'm not going to try to tell you what to do. I'm just going to be here with you in this. And that's the biggest gift that they give to us. So that's the gift that we now want to give our own body. I'm not here to change you. I'm not here to try to convince you to feel differently. I'm just showing up to be in this with you. And as we do this, different emotions can surface. Sometimes it's sadness. Sometimes it is gratitude. Sometimes it's anger. It can be a whole host of emotions that can surface when we actually start to be present. And that's why we learn the process of how do I open these emotions up safely? Sometimes what starts to surface doesn't feel safe to feel.
Trauma is not an isolated event. It's more of a subjective, sometimes even subconscious response to that. And it can be different from one person to the other. Help us, in your book, you talk about the 5 steps of the trauma response, maybe you can walk us through what those 5 steps are and maybe what it feels like so people can identify, oh, I felt that step, or I think I'm in that step right now. Can you walk us through that?
Yes. And as I walk through the 5 steps, I'll be curious to see who here relates to, oh, I feel like I'm stuck at that step.
Okay.
When we don't resolve these trauma responses, then we get stuck and we get stuck at a predominant step. And so I'll be curious who recognizes that. Let's say that it's an ordinary day in your ordinary life. Everything is going as ordinary as it should be. And so the first step is what we call the startle response. And the startle is the first moment that I sense that something is not ordinary. Something is dangerous. Something is wrong. I don't know for sure yet, but I have the sense that something could be wrong. This is what we get when we're walking down the sidewalk and we see someone walking towards us, and there's just something about how they're walking or the backpack that they're carrying or something about them. Like we don't even know what it is sometimes. We just get that sense that something's not right. Something's out of the ordinary. Now, this doesn't always need to be a danger. Sometimes I get so caught up in the work that I'm doing that I have started cooking something on the stove and completely forgotten about it. And then I start to smell food burning, or I hear the top of the pot boiling over. And I'm like, shoot, there's my startle moment. Oh my goodness, something's wrong. So it's just this idea that it's a problem. And well, my body needs to decide, is this a real danger or is it not? And so we jump when we startle. And if it's our kids that are jumping out from behind the corner, we're going to startle. We're going to have that response. We can't help it. And then our body returns to a sense of safety, seeing the information, the rest of the data points that says this is not a real danger. This was them playing a joke on me. So that startle is the first step. Now, in my book, I have the story of Laura, who has a hyper startle response. I would guess that some of you here might have a hyper startle response. You just startle so easily. And that is a very good indication that our nervous system has gotten stuck at this step. The next step, if we're going to go all the way into trauma, is the stress response. Now, from that startle, if and when our body says, yes, this is a real danger, now we need to do something about it. The doing something about it is the stress response. So now we are taking action. Maybe we're running, or maybe we are running away. Maybe we're running towards. If we're a firefighter, we're going to run towards the fire. If we're not the firefighter, we're going to run away from the fire. So whatever it is that we are supposed to do, it's taking action. That's the important aspect in physiology of the stress response. It's important because as long as we can do something, we stay in stress. And stress is not bad. Stress is like a sprint. How far can you sprint? How fast can you sprint? That's what determines your capacity for stress. By the time I got to 2014, my capacity for stress was so small because I had so much of this damage from this virus that had built up. I had, my genetic vulnerabilities. I had all of these buried emotions. And so with all of that, what was left for me to actually have the capacity to respond was very small. So small things would overwhelm me rather than just stress me out. So we stay in a stress response like a sprint until we can no longer do something. And that's the wall that I talk about in my book. So the next step is hitting that wall. And we hit the wall for different reasons, but at the end of the day, it's always the same thing. Hitting the wall means there's nothing else I can do. There's nothing else I can do. Sometimes that is self-generated. My own body says, I can't do anymore. I'm stopping you here. And sometimes it's circumstances that prevent us from taking further action.